Close your eyes for a moment. Forget everything you know about Earth. Forget the towering cities, the vast oceans, the familiar animals that roam our plains. Now, open them to a world reborn. Not a world of the future, but a world of the deep past. A world 300 million years ago, during a geological epoch known as the Carboniferous. This was a time so utterly alien, so profoundly different from anything we can comprehend, that it feels like stepping onto another planet. Yet, this was our planet, laying the very foundations for the life that would one day lead to us. Visual. Zoom in on the lush foliage, highlighting the strange, non-flowering plants. Imagine the air itself, not the air we breathe today, with its familiar 21% oxygen. No. 300 million years ago, the atmosphere was a supercharged cocktail, boasting oxygen levels that could reach an astonishing 35%, nearly double what we experience now. This hyper-oxygenated blanket was the breath of giants, the invisible, force that allowed life to push the boundaries of size in ways we can scarcely imagine. It was a world perpetually humid, bathed in a greenhouse warmth that spanned continents, fostering an explosion of plant life unlike anything seen before or since. Visual. Transition to a time lapse showing the growth of immense ancient trees, forming dense forests. The dominant feature of this ancient Earth was not mountains or vast deserts, but an endless verdant labyrinth, the coal forests. These weren't the forests of oak and pine we know. These were colossal, sprawling swamps dominated by towering club mosses, giant horsetails, and immense ferns, plants that today are mere undergrowth, but then stood as colossal titans, reaching heights of over 100 feet. Picture a primeval jungle, so dense and interconnected that sunlight struggled to pierce the canopy, leaving the forest floor in an eternal, steamy twilight. The air would have been thick with the scent of decay and lush vegetation, a symphony of rustling leaves and the constant drip of condensation. Visual. Show a cross-section of Earth, illustrating the massive layers of coal forming beneath the ancient forests. These magnificent forests weren't just a backdrop. They were the engine of a profound geological transformation. As these towering plants lived and died, they fell into the anoxic waters of the swamps, where the lack of oxygen prevented their complete decay. Layer upon layer, generation after generation, this organic matter accumulated, slowly compressed, by the weight of time and sediment. Over millions of years, this buried vegetation was transformed under immense pressure and heat into the vast coal deposits that fueled the Industrial Revolution and continue to power parts of our modern world. Every lump of coal we burn is a fossilized whisper from this ancient, forgotten age, a compressed memory of a world teeming with life. Visual. Quick, tantalizing flashes of giant insects, a huge dragonfly wing, a segment of a massive millipede, a scorpion's claw, keeping them slightly obscured to build anticipation. But the plants were just one part of this astonishing story. This oxygen-rich environment, this boundless buffet of vegetation, set the stage for the true stars of the Carboniferous, the invertebrates. Without the same respiratory limitations that restrict modern insects, arthropods of this era grew to truly monstrous proportions. Imagine dragonflies with wingspans like eagles, scorpions the size of house cats, and millipedes longer than a human being. These were not the creepy crawlies we swat away today. These were apex predators, silent hunters, and colossal grazers that dominated their ecosystems. Their sheer scale is a testament to the unique atmospheric conditions of the time, a biological marvel that science is still unraveling. Visual. Show early, primitive amphibians navigating the swampy undergrowth, perhaps a brief glimpse of a fish with limb-like fins. And what of the vertebrates? While the age of dinosaurs was still hundreds of millions of years in the future, the Carboniferous was a pivotal time for our own lineage. It was the era when amphibians, having made their tentative first steps onto land in the preceding Devonian period, truly diversified and conquered the swampy terrestrial realm. These early tetrapods, some still heavily reliant on water, others developing more robust limbs for land travel, were the dominant large predators of the forests, navigating the dense undergrowth and murky pools in search of prey. Their very existence was a testament to the ongoing evolutionary dance between land and water, a dance that would eventually lead to the reptiles, the dinosaurs, and ultimately to us. Visual, a wide shot of the Carboniferous landscape, emphasizing its alien beauty and the sheer scale of the vegetation and implied life. The Carboniferous was a chapter in Earth's story defined by extremes: extreme oxygen, extreme humidity, and extreme growth. It was a period of unparalleled biological experimentation, where life pushed the boundaries of what was possible, creating forms that would seem fantastical to modern eyes. It was a time of immense geological activity, laying down the energy, reserves that would shape human civilization millennia later. But most importantly, it was a time when the blueprint for future life was being drawn, when the foundations were being laid for the complex ecosystems and diverse creatures that would follow. Join us as we delve deeper into this lost world, part by part, to uncover the secrets of life 300 million years ago, giant insects, swamps, and Earth before humans. Prepare to be amazed, to be intrigued, and to see our planet's history in a whole new light. In our last episode, we journeyed back 300 million years to the Carboniferous period, a world of steamy, oxygen-rich swamps and towering alien forests. We touched upon the incredible scale of life in this forgotten era, but now, prepare to truly meet the monarchs of this primeval realm, the arthropods. Forget the tiny insects and spiders that scuttle across our floors today. In the Carboniferous, these creatures were titans, pushing the very boundaries of size, their forms both magnificent and terrifying. Their reign was a direct consequence of Earth's unique atmosphere, a supercharged cocktail of oxygen that allowed them to grow to proportions that defy modern imagination. Visual, animated diagram of a modern insect's tracheal system versus a Carboniferous, insect's more efficient system, illustrating how higher oxygen allows for larger size. The secret to their gigantism lies in their respiratory system. Unlike vertebrates, which use lungs to actively pump air, insects and many other arthropods rely on a network of tubes called tracheae that branch throughout their bodies. Oxygen diffuses directly from the air into their tissues through these tubes. In today's 21% oxygen atmosphere, this diffusion is efficient enough for smaller bodies. But imagine an atmosphere with up to 35% oxygen. This hyper-oxygenated air meant that oxygen could diffuse much more effectively, even over longer distances, allowing these creatures to sustain much larger body masses without suffocating their internal organs. It was a biological loophole, a brief window in Earth's history where the very air enabled the impossible. Visual, CGI recreation of Meganeura flying through the swamp, hunting smaller insects or early amphibians, show its massive wingspan in relation to the trees. Perhaps the most iconic of these Carboniferous giants was Meganeura, a dragonfly-like insect with a wingspan that could exceed 75 centimeters, 30 inches, roughly the size of a modern-day eagle. Imagine the sheer power of those wings, beating through the humid air. Meganeura wasn't just big. It was an apex aerial predator. Its enormous compound eyes, each containing thousands of individual lenses, would have given it unparalleled vision, allowing it to spot prey from a distance. Its powerful spiny legs were perfectly adapted for snatching smaller insects and perhaps even early, less agile amphibians directly out of the air or from the water's surface. The whirring sound of its massive wings would have been a constant, ominous presence above the dense swamp canopy. a clear signal of a hunter on the prowl. Their speed and agility, even at such a size, would have made them formidable. Visual close-up CGI of Arthropleura slowly moving through the forest floor, emphasizing its segmented body and many legs. Show it interacting with plants, perhaps, grazing. While Meganura ruled the skies, the undisputed king of the Carboniferous forest floor was Arthropleura. This colossal millipede, or centipede-like creature, could reach an astonishing length of up to 2.6 meters, 8.5 feet, and weigh over 50 kilograms, 110 pounds. Picture a segmented, armored tank, slowly but steadily navigating the dense undergrowth. Unlike its modern, often carnivorous centipede relatives, Arthropleura is believed to have been primarily a herbivore, using its powerful mandibles to chew through the tough, fibrous vegetation of the coal forests. Its sheer size would have made it impervious to most predators, a living, breathing bulldozer clearing paths through the ancient jungle. The rhythmic scuttling of its hundreds of legs would have been a low rumble, a constant reminder of its immense presence. The fossil record suggests that Arthropleura would have been a vital part of the ecosystem, breaking down plant matter and recycling nutrients back into the rich swamp soil. Visual, dramatic CGI of a giant scorpion, perhaps Pulmonoscorpius, lurking in the shadows, its tail raised threateningly. Show it ambushing a smaller creature. But not all ground dwellers were gentle giants. The Carboniferous also hosted scorpions of terrifying proportions. Pulmonoscorpius, for example, could grow to over 70 centimeters, 2.3 feet long, making it one of the largest terrestrial arthropods of all time. These ancient scorpions were formidable predators, armed with massive pincers capable of crushing prey and a venomous stinger that would have delivered a potent, paralyzing blow. Unlike modern scorpions, which are often nocturnal, these giants likely hunted during the day, their armored bodies providing protection as they stalked through the leaf litter and along the banks of the swamp. Their presence would have added another layer of danger to an already perilous landscape, a silent, lurking threat beneath every fallen fern frond. Visual, show various other large carboniferous insects and arachnids, oversized cockroaches, spider-like creatures, and early winged insects. Beyond these headline-grabbing giants, the Carboniferous was a hotbed of invertebrate diversity. Giant cockroaches, some reaching lengths of several inches, scurried through the undergrowth, acting as scavengers and decomposers. Early spider-like arachnids, though perhaps not as large as the scorpions, were still substantial, weaving intricate webs or ambushing prey from hidden crevices. The very first winged insects were evolving and diversifying rapidly, taking advantage of the abundant plant life and the oxygen-rich air. These creatures, in all their varied forms, filled every available ecological niche, from the highest canopies to the deepest mud, forming the backbone of the Carboniferous food web. Their success was a testament to their adaptability and the unique environmental conditions that favored their growth. Visual, a composite shot showing the scale of these arthropods compared to a human silhouette, emphasizing the alien nature of this past world. The sheer scale of these Carboniferous arthropods offers a fascinating glimpse into a world where the rules of biology seem to be rewritten. Their dominance wasn't just about size, it was about their ecological impact. They were the primary consumers of the vast plant biomass, the key predators in the air and on the ground, and essential components of the decomposition cycle. Their existence highlights the profound influence of atmospheric composition on the evolution of life. It was a golden age for invertebrates, a time when they reached their peak in terms of physical size, a phenomenon that has never been replicated on such a grand scale since. Visual. Transition to a more contemplative shot of the swamp, perhaps a sunrise or sunset, with the sounds of the giant insects fading slightly. But like all golden ages, this one would eventually draw to a close. Changes in climate and atmospheric conditions in later geological periods would ultimately lead to the decline of these colossal arthropods. ushering in new eras dominated by other forms of life. Yet their fossilized remains, preserved in the very coal they helped create, stand as a powerful reminder of Earth's dynamic past and the extraordinary forms life can take when given the right conditions. The reign of the arthropods was a spectacular, if brief, chapter in our planet's story, a testament to the incredible power of evolution and the ever-changing face of life. Join us next time as we delve deeper into the verdant labyrinth itself. The massive coal-making machines that formed the very foundation of this incredible world. In our last journey back 300 million years, we marveled at the colossal arthropods, the dragonflies the size of eagles, the millipedes longer than a human, and scorpions that stalked like shadows. But these magnificent creatures were not alone. They were merely inhabitants of an even more astounding phenomenon, the verdant labyrinth itself. This was a world utterly dominated by plants, a green, humid expanse that stretched across continents, tirelessly performing a geological feat that would shape the future of our planet and, indeed, our civilization. This was the age of the coal forests, the ultimate carbon-capturing machines. Visual, animated cross-section of the Earth showing the Carboniferous period's land masses and the vast extent of the swamp forests. Highlight areas that would become major coal deposits. Imagine stepping into this ancient wilderness. The air, as we discussed, was thick with oxygen, but also heavy with humidity, almost palpable. Sunlight, though abundant above the canopy, struggled to penetrate the dense layers of foliage, casting the forest floor in a perpetual, steamy twilight. The ground beneath your feet would not be solid earth, but a squelching, waterlogged peat, a testament to the constant cycle of growth and decay. The silence, when it came, would be profound, broken only by the drip of condensation from colossal leaves, the rustling of unseen creatures, and the distant calls of early amphibians. This was a world of unparalleled biological productivity, a true greenhouse Earth where life flourished in an almost unimaginable abundance. Visual, detailed CGI of a towering lepidodendron tree showing its distinctive diamond-patterned bark and branch scars. Perhaps a smaller amphibian or insect clinging to its trunk. At the heart of this verdant empire stood the lycopsids, often referred to as scale trees. These weren't trees in the modern sense, with true wood and annual growth rings. Instead, they were giant club mosses, like lepidodendron and sigillaria, that could soar to heights of 30 to 50 meters, 100 to 160 feet, their trunks reaching diameters of over a meter. Their bark was a striking mosaic of diamond-shaped scars, left behind as their leaves shed, giving them a reptilian, almost alien appearance. These fast-growing giants would shoot straight up, branching only near the top, forming a dense umbrella-like canopy that choked out any light below. Their root systems, known as stigmaria, were sprawling networks that anchored them firmly in the waterlogged soil, absorbing nutrients from the rich, decaying matter. Unlike modern trees, these giants reproduced via spores, releasing billions of microscopic reproductive units into the humid air, ensuring their rapid spread across the vast, swampy landscapes. Visual, CGI of a dense thicket of calamites, emphasizing their segmented, bamboo-like appearance and towering height. Sharing the canopy and forming dense understories were the sphenopsids, epitomized by the towering calamites. These were the ancient relatives of modern horsetails, but on a truly gargantuan scale. Imagine bamboo-like stalks, often over 20 meters, 65 feet tall, with segmented, hollow stems and whorls of needle-like leaves radiating from each joint. Calamites formed impenetrable thickets, creating a complex, multi-layered environment within the swamps. Their rapid growth and ability to colonize waterlogged areas made them incredibly successful, contributing significantly to the biomass that would eventually become coal. Their distinctive segmented structure is often beautifully preserved in the fossil record, a clear signature of their ancient dominance. Visual, close-up shots of various large ferns and seed ferns, highlighting their intricate fronds and diverse forms, perhaps an early reptile hiding amongst them. Beneath the towering lycopsids and sphenopsids, and filling every available space, was an astonishing diversity of ferns and seed ferns. These plants formed a lush, intricate understory, thriving in the damp, shaded conditions. While many familiar fern forms existed, the seed ferns were particularly significant. These were not true ferns, but a group of extinct plants that bore seeds, a revolutionary, evolutionary step. Unlike the spore-reproducing lycopsids and sphenopsids, seed ferns represented a move towards greater independence from water for reproduction, a crucial adaptation that would pave the way for more drought-tolerant plant life in subsequent periods. Their presence hints at the evolutionary innovations constantly at play in this dynamic ecosystem. Visual, animated sequence showing a plant dying, falling into the water, and then being slowly buried by sediment over geological time, emphasize the lack of oxygen preventing full decomposition. Now, let's turn to the truly monumental legacy of these forests. Coal. The process began with the relentless cycle of life and death. As these colossal plants matured and eventually fell, they didn't fully decompose. The waterlogged, anoxic, oxygen-deprived conditions of the Carboniferous swamps were key. In typical environments, bacteria and fungi rapidly break down dead organic matter. But in these swamps, the lack of oxygen inhibited these decomposers, allowing vast quantities of plant material to accumulate. This partially decayed matter formed thick layers of peat. Visual, time-lapse geological animation showing millions of years passing, with layers of sediment accumulating on top of the peat, compressing it. Over millions of years, as sea levels fluctuated and tectonic forces shifted, these peat layers were buried deeper and deeper beneath layers of sediment, sand, silt, and clay. The immense weight of these overlying sediments compacted the peat, squeezing out water and volatile compounds. As burial continued, the increasing pressure and geothermal heat from within the earth transformed the peat, first into lignite, then into subbituminous coal, then bituminous coal, and finally, in some regions, into the highly energy-dense anthracite. This slow, relentless geological cooking process, spanning tens to hundreds of millions of years, concentrated the carbon from the ancient plants, locking away vast amounts of solar energy captured by photosynthesis. Visual, global map highlighting the major coal basins around the world today, linking them back to the Carboniferous supercontinent Pangaea. The scale of this coal formation was truly global. The Carboniferous period saw the continents beginning to coalesce into the supercontinent Pangaea, creating vast, low-lying coastal plains and interior basins perfectly suited for these sprawling swamp forests. Today, the world's major coal deposits, from the Appalachian Mountains in North America to the coal fields of Europe, Asia, and Australia, are direct geological inheritances from this single ancient epoch. Every lump of coal we extract, every ton we burn, is a tangible link to this distant past, a compressed, fossilized remnant of a world teeming with life, breathing an atmosphere rich in oxygen and laying down the energy reserves that would power the Industrial Revolution and shape human civilization millennia later. Visual. A final contemplative shot of a modern coal power plant or a piece of coal, then slowly zoom out to a stylized representation of the Carboniferous swamp, emphasizing the profound connection across deep time. The Carboniferous forests were more than just a habitat for giant insects and early amphibians. They were the Earth's lungs and its energy storehouse. They dramatically altered the planet's atmosphere, drawing down massive amounts of carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen, fundamentally changing the conditions for life. Their legacy is literally etched into the bedrock of our planet, a silent testament to a time when plants ruled supreme, transforming sunlight and water into the compressed power that still fuels our world. But this verdant paradise would not last forever. As geological and climatic forces continued their relentless work, new challenges would emerge, pushing life to adapt once more. Join us next time as we turn our attention to the vertebrates of this ancient world and witness the rise of the amphibians ascendant, lords of the swamps. We've explored the supercharged atmosphere that fueled giant insects and the colossal forests that became Earth's coal reserves. Now, let's turn our gaze to the vertebrates, our ancient ancestors, who were taking their crucial evolutionary strides during this very same period. While dinosaurs were still hundreds of millions of years in the future, the Carboniferous was the undisputed age of amphibians. These were the pioneers, the first large vertebrates to truly conquer the land, transforming the dense, waterlogged swamps into their hunting grounds and nurseries. They were the apex predators of their time, the undisputed lords of the verdant. Labyrinths, visual animated evolutionary tree segment, showing the transition from lobe-finned fish to early tetrapods, highlighting Ichthyostega as a bridge. Illustrate fin-to-limb transformation. The story of amphibians begins in the preceding Devonian period, often called the Age of Fish. It was here, in shallow, oxygen-poor waters, that a revolutionary transformation began. Certain lobe-finned fish possessed fleshy, muscular fins supported by bones, precursors to true limbs. Creatures like Ichthyostega, while still largely aquatic, represented a critical transitional form, possessing both fish-like tails and gills, alongside robust, limb-like fins capable of supporting their weight on land. This was the initial, tentative step out of the water, driven by factors like escaping aquatic predators, accessing new food sources, or seeking refuge in drying pools. The Carboniferous, with its vast interconnected swamps, provided the perfect stage for these early tetrapods to truly diversify and flourish. Visual, CGI of various early Carboniferous amphibians, showcasing their diversity in size and form, from sprawling salamander-like creatures to more robust crocodile-like predators, show them moving with a distinct, waddling gait. By the Carboniferous, these early amphibians had exploded into a remarkable array of forms, collectively known as temnospondyls and anthracosaurs. They were not the small, delicate frogs and salamanders we know today. Many were large, formidable predators. Imagine the Eriops, a well-known Carboniferous amphibian growing up to 2 meters, 6.5 feet long, and weighing over 90 kilograms, 200 pounds. With its broad, flat skull, powerful jaws lined with sharp teeth, and stout limbs, Eriops would have resembled a giant, heavily built salamander or a primitive crocodile. It was perfectly adapted for a semi-aquatic lifestyle, equally at home, lurking in the murky waters or lumbering across the damp forest floor. Its large, bony skull suggests a powerful bite, capable of crushing the bones of fish, smaller amphibians, and even the larger arthropods of the time. Visual, close-up CGI of an amphibian's skin, emphasizing its permeability. Show it, submerging, in water, then emerging, illustrating its reliance on moisture. Despite their terrestrial advancements, Carboniferous amphibians retained a fundamental connection to water, a defining characteristic that still limits modern amphibians today. Their skin, unlike the scaly hide of reptiles, was permeable, meaning it allowed for the absorption of water and oxygen directly from the environment. While this was beneficial for respiration in damp conditions, it also meant they were highly susceptible to dehydration. Consequently, they were inextricably tied to the humid, waterlogged environments of the coal swamps. They couldn't venture far into drier regions, as their very survival depended on constant access to moisture. This physiological limitation shaped their distribution and lifestyle, confining them largely to the verdant labyrinth. Visual, animated sequence showing amphibians laying jelly-like eggs in water and the subsequent development of tadpole-like larvae. Compare this to fish spawning. Their reproductive strategy further cemented their reliance on water. Like modern amphibians, these ancient forms laid soft, jelly-like eggs directly in the water. These eggs lacked the protective shell that would later allow reptiles to lay eggs on dry land. Upon hatching, the young would emerge as aquatic larvae, much like modern tadpoles, equipped with gills for breathing underwater. They would spend their early lives in the safety of the swamp's pools, feeding on aquatic invertebrates and smaller fish, before undergoing metamorphosis to develop lungs and limbs, enabling them to transition to a more terrestrial existence. This two-stage life cycle, from aquatic larva to land-dwelling adult, is a hallmark of amphibians and a direct link to their fish ancestry. Visual, dynamic CGI of an Archaeops ambushing a fish in the water or a smaller amphibian on land show its powerful jaws and teeth. As the largest and most diverse group of vertebrates in the Carboniferous, amphibians occupied a dominant position in the food web. They were formidable predators, preying on the abundant fish in the swamps, the smaller, less agile arthropods, and even other smaller amphibians. Their powerful jaws and sharp conical teeth were well suited for grasping and swallowing slippery prey. Their sprawling posture, with limbs splayed out to the sides, allowed for a relatively stable, if somewhat cumbersome, gait on land, enabling them to move between water bodies and ambush prey from the dense undergrowth. The sheer number and variety of these creatures meant that they were a constant force shaping the ecosystems of the coal forests. Visual, a wide shot of the Carboniferous swamp, emphasizing the amphibians as the dominant large animals, sharing the space with giant insects and towering plants. The Carboniferous period was a golden age for amphibians, a time when they truly diversified and adapted to a semi-terrestrial existence. They filled the ecological roles that would later be occupied by reptiles and eventually mammals, proving that life, given the right conditions, can find a way to conquer new frontiers. Their success was intricately linked to the unique environment of the coal swamps, the high humidity, the abundant food sources, and the relatively stable climate. They were the bridge between the aquatic world of their fish ancestors and the fully terrestrial world that would be explored by their reptilian descendants. Visual, transition to a more abstract visual, perhaps a subtle hint of a scaly skin, developing over time, foreshadowing the next evolutionary step. However, the very conditions that allowed amphibians to flourish also set their limits. Their dependence on water for reproduction and their permeable skin meant that as Earth's climate began to shift in later periods, becoming drier and more seasonal, these magnificent lords of the swamps would face new challenges. But before that, a new evolutionary innovation, seemingly small at first, would emerge from within their ranks, a development that would fundamentally change the course of vertebrate evolution forever. Join us next time as we uncover the story of the first reptiles, a glimmer of the future, and witness the birth of a truly terrestrial lineage. We've journeyed through the towering coal forests, witnessed the reign of colossal arthropods, and seen amphibians take their first triumphant steps onto land. But for all the drama unfolding on the terrestrial surface, a vast and equally fascinating world thrived beneath the murky waters of the Carboniferous swamps, rivers, and shallow seas. This was a realm teeming with diverse aquatic life, a complex ecosystem that supported and was supported by the life above. From bizarre sharks to the ancestors of all land vertebrates, the ancient aquatic ecosystems of the Carboniferous were a vibrant, often perilous world unto themselves. Visual, animated diagram illustrating the interconnectedness of the aquatic and terrestrial food webs in the Carboniferous swamp. The Carboniferous period, roughly 359 to 299 million years ago, was characterized by widespread shallow seas and vast interconnected freshwater and brackish swamps. These aquatic environments were not merely passive backdrops, they were dynamic centers of life, forming the base of many food chains and serving as crucial nurseries for countless species. The constant influx of decaying plant matter from the surrounding coal forests enriched these waters, providing abundant nutrients for a thriving community of invertebrates, which in turn supported a diverse array of fish and other aquatic predators. The line between land and water was often blurred, with many creatures moving between both realms, creating a truly unique ecological tapestry. Visual CGI of an early shark like Stethecanthus, with its distinctive anvil-shaped dorsal fin, swimming gracefully through the water, show its unique features in detail. Among the most intriguing inhabitants of these ancient waters were the sharks. But these weren't the sleek, streamlined predators we recognize today. Carboniferous sharks were a menagerie of bizarre and experimental forms. Take Stethecanthus, often dubbed the ironing board shark due to its remarkably peculiar dorsal fin, which was shaped like an anvil or a brush, covered in small, tooth-like denticles. The purpose of this strange structure is still debated by paleontologists. Perhaps it was used for display, for gripping during mating, or even as a sensory organ. Despite their unusual appearances, these early sharks were formidable predators, their cartilaginous skeletons allowing for agile movement through the water as they hunted fish and other marine life. Their presence underscores the incredible diversity and evolutionary experimentation occurring in the oceans of this period. Visual show various other types of early sharks, like Xenacanthus with its spine on its head, or more conventional early shark forms. Beyond Stethecanthus, other early sharks like Xenacanthus prowled the freshwater swamps. This eel-like shark possessed a distinctive spine projecting backward from the back of its head and a unique V-shaped tooth pattern. Such adaptations suggest specialized hunting techniques within the dense aquatic vegetation. These ancient sharks filled a variety of predatory niches, from open water hunters to ambush predators lurking in the shadows of submerged roots. Their success in the Carboniferous laid the groundwork for the incredible diversification of sharks that would follow in later geological eras, proving their ancient lineage and adaptability. Visual animated sequence showing schools of ray-finned fish, highlighting their flexible fins and diverse body shapes, show them feeding on smaller invertebrates. While sharks were the top predators, the most abundant and diverse group of fish were the ray-finned fish, or Actinopterygii. These were the ancestors of the vast majority of fish species alive today. Unlike lobe-finned fish, their fins were supported by bony rays, allowing for greater flexibility and maneuverability. Carboniferous ray-finned fish came in a wide array of sizes and forms, from small, agile swimmers that formed schools to larger, more robust species. They fed on a variety of prey, including aquatic insects, crustaceans, and other smaller fish. Their rapid diversification during this period was a testament to their efficient swimming capabilities and their ability to exploit the abundant food resources of the ancient waters. Visual close-up CGI of a lobe-finned fish, emphasizing its fleshy, muscular fins with visible bones, show it walking or propping itself up on the bottom of a shallow pool. Of particular evolutionary significance were the lobe-finned fish, or Sarcopterygii. While less diverse than their ray-finned cousins, these fish held the key to the future of all terrestrial vertebrates, including humans. Their fleshy, muscular fins, supported by a central bony skeleton, were the direct precursors to the limbs of tetrapods. Creatures like coelacanths, which still exist today as living fossils, and lungfish, also still around, are modern descendants of this ancient lineage, offering a glimpse into their ancestral forms. In the Carboniferous, these lobe-finned fish were likely adept at navigating shallow, oxygen-poor waters, using their robust fins to walk along the bottom or even prop themselves up to gulp air at the surface. Their ability to breathe air using primitive lungs, a crucial adaptation for surviving in stagnant, deoxygenated pools, further highlights their transitional nature. Visual dynamic hunting scene, a large lobe-finned fish ambushing a smaller, ray-finned fish, or an early amphibian snatching a fish from the water's edge. The aquatic food web was a complex interplay of predator and prey. The large amphibians, as we discussed, were semi-aquatic, often lurking at the water's edge to ambush fish and other aquatic creatures. The giant arthropods, like Meganeura, might also snatch fish from the surface. In turn, the fish themselves preyed on a vast array of aquatic invertebrates, including ancient crustaceans, mollusks, and the larval stages of insects and amphibians. This constant cycle of consumption and decomposition ensured that energy flowed efficiently through the ecosystem, supporting the incredible biomass of both the aquatic and terrestrial realms. The murky depths were a constant battleground, where survival depended on speed, stealth, or sheer size. Visual, wide shot of the carboniferous aquatic environment, emphasizing the density of life and the unique forms of its inhabitants. The aquatic ecosystems of the Carboniferous were not just a habitat. They were an evolutionary crucible. They were the stage where the crucial transition from water to land was refined, where the ancestors of all future land-dwelling vertebrates honed the adaptations that would allow them to conquer new frontiers. They supported an astonishing diversity of life, from the bizarre experimental forms of early sharks to the foundational ray-finned fish and the pivotal lobe-finned fish. The constant interaction between the aquatic and terrestrial environments created a unique and dynamic world where the boundaries of life were constantly being pushed. Visual, transition to a subtle visual of land becoming drier, perhaps a cracked mudflat hinting at future environmental changes. However, like all periods of Earth's history, the Carboniferous was not static. As geological forces continued to shape the continents and climate patterns began to shift, the vast interconnected swamps and shallow seas would eventually face new pressures. The very conditions that allowed these aquatic ecosystems to flourish would begin to change, leading to new evolutionary challenges and opportunities. The stage was being set for the next great chapter in Earth's story, one that would see life further break free from its aquatic origins. Join us next time as we uncover the story of the first reptiles, a glimmer of the future, and witness the birth of a truly terrestrial lineage freed from the water's embrace. We've seen the Carboniferous as a world defined by water, vast, humid swamps teeming with colossal plant life, giant insects, and amphibians that ruled both land and murky depths. But for all the amphibians' evolutionary triumphs, their destiny was inextricably tied to water. Their permeable skin and jelly-like eggs meant they could never truly escape the swamp's embrace. Yet within this very same period, a quiet revolution was beginning. A small, unassuming creature, barely larger than a modern lizard, was about to unveil an innovation that would fundamentally reshape the future of life on Earth. This was the birth of the reptiles, and with them, the glimmer of a truly terrestrial future. Visual, animated sequence showing an amphibian struggling in a slightly drier patch, then contrasting it with a small reptile moving freely. Emphasize the amphibian's need for moisture. Let's briefly revisit the limitations of the amphibians. While they had developed limbs and lungs, allowing them to move and breathe on land, two critical biological constraints held them captive to the humid environments. First, their permeable skin, as discussed in our last episode, allowed for gas exchange and water absorption, but also made them highly vulnerable to desiccation. Venture too far from a damp environment, and they would quickly dry out. Second, and perhaps even more significantly, was their reproductive strategy. Like their fish ancestors, amphibians had to lay their soft, unprotected eggs directly in water. These eggs lacked any robust outer shell or internal membranes to prevent them from drying out, meaning that every new generation began its life in an aquatic nursery, leaving the species vulnerable to fluctuating water levels and limited to areas with permanent water sources. This was the evolutionary bottleneck that needed to be overcome for life to truly conquer the vast, drier landscapes of the world. Visual. Detailed animated cross-section of an amniotic egg, clearly labeling the amnion, yolk sac, allantois, and chorion, show how each layer functions. The solution arrived in the form of one of the most pivotal innovations in vertebrate evolution, the amniotic egg. This self-contained miniature pond was a biological marvel. It allowed the embryo to develop entirely on land, free from the need for external water. Let's break down its ingenious design. Amnion. This is the innermost membrane, forming a fluid-filled sac directly around the embryo. It acts as a protective cushion, shielding the developing embryo from physical shock and, crucially, preventing it from drying out. It's like having a private portable pond for the embryo. Yolk sac. A large sac containing the yolk, which provides a rich supply of nutrients for the growing embryo. This allows for a longer developmental period within the egg, leading to a more developed hatchling. Allantois. This membrane serves two vital functions. It stores metabolic waste products produced by the embryo and facilitates gas exchange, oxygen, in, carbon dioxide out, with the outside environment. Chorion, the outermost membrane, enclosing all the other structures. It's permeable to gases, but impermeable to water, allowing the embryo to breathe while remaining hydrated. Albumin, egg white, provides additional protein and water for the embryo. Leathery or hard shell, the outermost protective layer. Unlike bird eggs, the earliest reptile eggs likely had a leathery, flexible shell, which still offered protection against physical damage and, most importantly, desiccation. This complex, multi-layered structure was a game changer. It meant that vertebrates could now lay their eggs on dry land, in nests, buried in soil or under logs, away from aquatic predators and liberated from the need for permanent water bodies. This single adaptation opened up vast new terrestrial environments for colonization. Visual. CGI of Hylonomus scurrying over a mossy log or within the hollow of a tree stump. Emphasize its small size and lizard-like appearance. Among the very earliest known reptiles, a tiny creature named Hylonomus stands out. Living approximately 312 million years ago, Hylonomus was a small lizard-like animal, typically no more than 20 centimeters, 8 inches long, including its tail. Its name, meaning forest mouse, aptly describes its likely lifestyle. Fossils of Hylonomus have been found remarkably preserved within the fossilized hollows of lepidodendron tree stumps in Nova Scotia, Canada. These stumps, once towering trees, in the Carboniferous swamps, became natural traps for small animals seeking shelter or foraging, and then filled with sediment, preserving their remains. This unique preservation method has given us an unparalleled glimpse into the lives of these pioneering reptiles. Visual. Show Hylonomus, perhaps hunting small insects or other arthropods in a slightly drier, less swampy area. Contrast its agility with the amphibian's more cumbersome movement on land. These early reptiles likely occupied a distinct ecological niche, avoiding direct competition with the larger swamp-dwelling amphibians. While amphibians dominated the wet, boggy areas, Hylonomus and its relatives were probably more at home in the slightly drier upland regions of the Carboniferous forests, or even within the higher, drier parts of the swamps themselves. Their scaly skin, a new adaptation, provided excellent protection against water loss, allowing them to spend extended periods away from standing water. They would have fed primarily on the abundant insects and other small arthropods that thrived in these environments, using their agility and keen senses to hunt among the leaf litter and under logs. Their small size would have allowed them to exploit crevices and shelters unavailable to larger predators. Visual. Animated map showing the gradual expansion of drier land areas as the Carboniferous progresses and the potential for reptiles. to colonize these new niches. The advent of the amniotic egg and scaly skin provided reptiles with enormous evolutionary advantages. They were no longer constrained by the need for water for reproduction, nor were they as vulnerable to desiccation. This newfound independence from aquatic environments meant they could colonize vast new territories, the drier uplands, the more seasonal forests, and eventually the deserts that would emerge in later periods. While the Carboniferous was still largely wet, these early reptiles were already laying the groundwork for a future where vertebrates could truly thrive in every terrestrial habitat on Earth. They were the trailblazers, the first to truly break free from the aquatic cradle of life. Visual, a composite shot showing the small Hylonomus in the foreground, with a massive Ariops or Arthropleura in the background, emphasizing the initial disparity in size, but hinting at the future dominance of reptiles. It's easy to overlook these small, unassuming pioneers when compared to the colossal amphibians and giant insects that dominated the Carboniferous landscape. Yet, their seemingly minor innovations, the amniotic egg and scaly skin, represented a monumental leap in vertebrate evolution. They were the humble beginnings of a lineage that would go on to produce the mighty dinosaurs, the agile birds, and eventually, the diverse array of mammals, including ourselves. Every time a bird lays an egg or a lizard basks in the sun, it is a direct echo of that revolutionary moment in the Carboniferous. Visual, transition to a sweeping shot of the Carboniferous landscape, then slowly zoom out to a global view, hinting at the vast geological forces at play. The Carboniferous period was a time of incredible biological experimentation and profound geological change. The rise of reptiles, though subtle at first, was a critical turning point, setting the stage for the next great explosion of life on land. But these biological shifts were not happening in a vacuum. They were intricately linked to the grand, sweeping transformations occurring across the entire planet. As continents continued to drift and climates began to fluctuate, the very face of Earth was changing, creating new challenges and opportunities for the life that called it home. Join us next time as we explore the Carboniferous climate and geology, Earth's grand transformation, and uncover the immense forces that shaped this ancient world. We've journeyed deep into the Carboniferous, marveling at its colossal insects, its vast coal-making forests, and the pioneering amphibians and reptiles that began to conquer the land. But none of these biological wonders existed in a vacuum. They were intricately woven into the fabric of a planet undergoing its own monumental transformation. The very air they breathed, the land they walked upon, and the climate that nurtured them were all products of immense slow-motion geological and atmospheric forces. This was Earth's grand transformation, a period where our planet took a deep carbon-rich breath, fundamentally reshaping itself for millions of years to come. Visual, global climate map of the Carboniferous, highlighting the widespread tropical and subtropical zones, show ocean currents and atmospheric circulation patterns. For much of the Carboniferous period, Earth experienced a remarkably warm and humid climate, a true greenhouse world. Global temperatures were significantly higher than today, and tropical conditions extended far into what are now temperate zones. This pervasive warmth, combined with abundant rainfall, created the ideal conditions for the explosion of plant life we discussed, the very foundation of the coal forests. There were no polar ice caps for most of the period, and the vast shallow seas that covered much of the continental shelves contributed to the stable, warm temperatures. This consistent warmth meant that the lush, verdant swamps could flourish on an unprecedented scale, spanning vast swathes of the supercontinent that was then beginning to form. Visual, animated graph showing atmospheric oxygen levels peaking during the Carboniferous, alongside a corresponding drop in CO2. Illustrate the role of photosynthesis. One of the most striking features of the Carboniferous atmosphere was its extraordinary composition. As we briefly touched upon, oxygen levels soared, reaching an astonishing peak of around 35%, nearly double today's concentration. This hyper-oxygenated air was the direct consequence of the rampant photosynthesis occurring in the colossal coal forests. These vast plant communities were tirelessly drawing down massive amounts of carbon dioxide, CO2, from the atmosphere and releasing oxygen as a byproduct. With so much plant matter being buried and preserved as coal rather than decaying and releasing its carbon back into the atmosphere, the CO2 levels plummeted. This dramatic shift in atmospheric gases had profound implications, not only for the gigantism of arthropods, but also for the overall climate and the very chemistry of Earth's oceans. It was a period of intense planetary breathing, with life itself actively sculpting the air it lived in. Visual. Animated continental drift, starting from earlier configurations and showing the continents slowly moving towards the formation of Pangaea during the Carboniferous. Highlight the collision zones. Simultaneously, beneath the surface, the colossal forces of plate tectonics were relentlessly at work. The Carboniferous was a critical period in the assembly of the supercontinent Pangaea. Prior to this, Earth's land masses were fragmented. Throughout the Carboniferous, these continental plates slowly but inexorably began to collide and merge. The ancient continents of Laurasia, North America and Europe, and Gondwana, South America, Africa, Antarctica, Australia, and India, began their slow dance of convergence. This immense geological activity wasn't just about moving land. It created massive mountain ranges such as the ancestral Appalachian Mountains in North America and the Hercynian Mountains in Europe as continental crust crumpled and uplifted. These mountain-building events profoundly influenced global weather patterns, creating rain shadows and directing atmospheric circulation, further shaping the distribution of the coal forests. Visual. Show the newly formed mountain ranges in CGI, emphasizing their scale and how they might have influenced local climates. The formation of Pangaea had several critical impacts. Firstly, it reduced the amount of shallow continental shelf seas, which are important for moderating global temperatures. As land masses consolidated, larger interior regions developed, leading to more extreme seasonal temperature variations in those areas. Secondly, the uplift of massive mountain ranges created new habitats and altered drainage patterns, influencing the flow of rivers and the formation of vast inland swamp basins. This continental configuration also affected ocean currents, potentially leading to a more uniform global climate for much of the period, before later shifts. The sheer scale of this continental assembly was a defining geological event, setting the stage for the next great geological and climatic shifts. Visual. Transition to a visual representing a cooling trend in the late Carboniferous, perhaps, showing early signs of ice formation or shrinking swamp areas. Hint at a shift away from the extreme greenhouse. However, the Carboniferous, like all geological epochs, was not static. Towards the end of the period, around 300 million years ago, a significant climatic shift began to occur. The massive drawdown of CO2 by the coal forests, coupled with the changing continental configurations, contributed to a global cooling trend. This led to a period of significant glaciation, particularly in the southern regions of Gondwana. Evidence for this late Carboniferous ice age can be found in ancient glacial deposits across continents that were once part of Gondwana. This cooling and drying trend marked a departure from the earlier, consistently warm and humid conditions, signaling the beginning of the end for the widespread coal swamps. Visual, a final sweeping shot of the Carboniferous landscape, now with hints of drier areas and perhaps a more varied topography, emphasizing the dynamic nature of Earth's systems. The Carboniferous period was a testament to the powerful interplay between life and Earth's systems. The flourishing of plants fundamentally altered the atmosphere, which in turn allowed for the gigantism of arthropods and the diversification of amphibians. Simultaneously, the relentless march of continental drift reshaped the planet's surface, creating new geographies and influencing global climates. This grand transformation laid down the vast energy reserves that would one day fuel human civilization, but it also set the stage for the next great evolutionary and geological chapters. The Carboniferous was a period of immense planetary change, a deep breath taken by Earth before its next great exhalation. Join us in our final episode as we explore the end of an era and lasting legacy, a planet's deep breath, and reflect on how this ancient world continues to shape our present. We've journeyed through a truly alien Earth 300 million years ago, a world of supercharged oxygen, colossal insects, towering coal forests, and pioneering amphibians. We've witnessed the birth of reptiles and the grand tectonic dance that assembled a supercontinent. But like all chapters in Earth's epic story, the Carboniferous period, with its unique conditions and magnificent life forms, would eventually draw to a close. The very forces that allowed it to flourish would, in time, lead to its transformation. This final episode explores the end of an era and lasting legacy, how this ancient world passed into history, and how its profound impact continues to shape our planet and our lives today. Visual, animated graph showing the decline of atmospheric CO2 and oxygen levels in the late Carboniferous and early Permian. Show a corresponding drop in global temperatures. The primary catalyst for the Carboniferous's decline was a dramatic climatic shift. For millions of years, the planet had enjoyed a remarkably stable, warm, and humid greenhouse climate. However, the very success of the coal forests, as we discussed, began to alter this balance. The immense amount of photosynthesis occurring globally, coupled with the burial of vast quantities of organic carbon as coal, led to a significant drawdown of atmospheric carbon dioxide, CO2. CO2 is a powerful greenhouse gas, and its reduction in the atmosphere acted like a global thermostat being turned down. This led to a gradual but persistent global cooling trend. Visual, animated map showing the expansion of ice sheets, particularly over the southern parts of Gondwana, during the late Carboniferous Ice Age, show sea levels dropping. This cooling culminated in a major geological event, the late Carboniferous Ice Age, also known as the Karoo Ice Age. For tens of millions of years, vast ice sheets expanded across the southern supercontinent of Gondwana, covering large parts of what are now Africa, South America, Australia, and Antarctica. Evidence for this extensive glaciation is preserved in the fossil record as glacial striations on bedrock and widespread till deposits. The formation of these massive ice sheets locked up enormous volumes of water, leading to a significant drop in global sea levels. This sea level fall exposed vast areas of continental shelf, transforming shallow seas into dry land and further disrupting the widespread swamp ecosystems. The once dominant, sprawling coal forests, which required consistent warmth and abundant moisture, began to fragment and recede. Visual, CGI showing the drying out of a swamp area with trees dying and the ground cracking. Amphibians struggling, while small reptiles find new niches. The combination of cooling temperatures and falling sea levels led directly to habitat loss for the characteristic Carboniferous life forms. The vast, interconnected swamps began to dry out, replaced by more seasonal wetlands, drier uplands, and even arid regions. For the giant amphibians, whose permeable skin and water-dependent eggs tied them inextricably to humid environments, this was a catastrophic change. Their habitats shrank, fragmented, and became increasingly inhospitable. Many specialized amphibian lineages, unable to adapt to the drier conditions, faced severe population declines and eventual extinction. Their reign as the dominant large, terrestrial vertebrates began to wane. Visual, show the giant insects, e.g., Meganura, Arthropleura, becoming less prevalent or smaller, hinting at the atmospheric changes impacting their size. The changing atmospheric composition also played a role in the decline of the colossal arthropods. While the exact interplay is complex, the gradual decrease in atmospheric oxygen from its Carboniferous peak would have removed the primary physiological advantage that allowed creatures like Meganura and Arthropleura to reach such enormous sizes. As oxygen levels returned to more moderate concentrations, the respiratory limitations of the tracheal system would have once again favored smaller body plans. While arthropods continued to thrive, the age of the true giants among them was drawing to a close, making way for different evolutionary strategies. Visual. A subtle visual of the early reptiles, e.g. Hylonomus, thriving in the drier, more open environments, perhaps showing them laying eggs in soil. Amidst this environmental upheaval, the small, unassuming reptiles found their opportunity. Their key evolutionary innovation, the amniotic egg, provided them with a crucial advantage. Freed from the need to lay their eggs in water and protected by their scaly, less permeable skin, reptiles were perfectly poised to exploit the newly emerging drier habitats. As the swamps receded, these early amniotes could colonize the more arid uplands and seasonal forests, finding new niches and outcompeting the amphibians in these changing conditions. This period of environmental stress for amphibians became a period of opportunity and diversification for the early reptiles, setting the stage for their explosive radiation in the subsequent Permian period. Visual. A montage of the Carboniferous' key features, giant plants, insects, amphibians, then transition to a modern coal mine or power plant, emphasizing the link. While the Carboniferous period ultimately gave way to the Permian, its legacy is undeniably profound and continues to shape our world today. Its most tangible and impactful gift is the vast coal reserves that lie buried beneath our continents. These fossilized remnants of the ancient coal forests represent an immense store of solar energy captured by photosynthesis over millions of years. The Industrial Revolution and much of our modern energy infrastructure was built upon this Carboniferous inheritance. Coal-powered factories, heated homes, and fueled transportation, fundamentally transforming human society and enabling unprecedented technological advancement. This ancient carbon, locked away for eons, has been rapidly released back into the atmosphere in the last few centuries, a process that is now driving contemporary climate change. Visual. A final sweeping, contemplative shot of Earth from space, then zoom in on a modern forest and finally a human face, connecting the deep past to our present existence. Beyond coal, the Carboniferous was a crucible of evolution. It was a period of incredible biological experimentation, pushing the boundaries of what life could achieve. It saw the diversification of amphibians, the emergence of the first true land-dwelling vertebrates in the form of reptiles, and the astounding gigantism of arthropods. The changes in atmospheric composition during this time, driven by life itself, profoundly altered the planet's environment, demonstrating the powerful feedback loops between geology, climate, and biology. The Carboniferous reminds us of the deep time of Earth's history, the constant flux of its systems, and the incredible resilience and adaptability of life. Every breath we take, every piece of coal we burn, every time we see a reptile or an insect, we are witnessing a direct echo of that ancient, alien world. The Carboniferous was a planet's deep breath, a monumental chapter that continues to resonate through the ages, shaping the very world we inhabit.